Hello everyone. I have been struggling to understand different ways of creating APIs using Django and Django REST framework. Therefore, I thought I will dissect the problem and then try to understand each piece one by one. It's really quite confusing if we hear different ways to create these APIs. So in class-based approach or class-based views, this view belongs to pure Django features, but API view, generic view, view sets, all these things belongs to Django REST framework, and it's quite hard to decide which one should we use when we start building Django application. But now I guess I have good grasp on what should be used based on the complexity of your application. So in the coming up slides I will actually explain different ways of creating APIs using Django REST framework and the benefits of one over the other. So at the end of the video you will be able to decide what's the right thing for you to do. So let's start. So even in Django REST framework, we have function-based views. In pure Django, actually, we can just create one view, and inside that view, we have to use like if-else condition to determine what kind of request it is, like get, post, put, delete. Actually, I have one separate video on creating APIs only using Django features, not the REST framework, but the Django features. And in this video I will be using only the REST framework and different things that are available in the REST framework in terms of creating RESTful APIs. So in function-based views we have a decorator called APIView, which belongs to Django REST framework, views.decorators, and APIView, where we can include get, post, delete, or put HTTP verbs, and we can customize that function to act accordingly. So let's try to see how can we use this API view. For that I will create a new project called Django admin start project. Let's call it rest call it APIs using Django REST framework and APIs. Let's navigate inside that. Python 3 manage. I will migrate everything and I will create a simple user so that we can log into the admin panel and see different things. Python 3 manage create super user. I'll call it gmail.com and just enter me password. Yes, I would like to create. Now Python 3 manage run server. Yes, so my server is running and you can see the first or initial Django setup is running well. Let's log into the project APIs using Django REST framework. I will create Django admin app called blocks start app called blocks, and let me open this in the Visual Code Studio. Open. Yeah, you won't be able to see that, just give me a few seconds. It's called API using Django REST framework, and let me bring it back to the active window. So here you can see this is our main project, and inside settings let me include our app called blocks. If we try to navigate back to the Django admin panel, admin, and Yeah, we can log in, but you won't see the blog yet because I haven't created that. So let's try to create a blog and try to enter something into the blog model. So first of all, we need to add blocks into the install apps. So inside blocks, in the model, let me create a blog model class. Let me probably increase the font size. Class blog model, which will inherit from model. It will let's have a simple models dot char field, and maximum length is max length, let's say 1000, and next field is content models dot text field. I think that's enough. Okay, let me put blank true, so that we can, even though if it's empty, we should be able to save it from the Django admin panel. So now we have created this blog model. Now we need to register that into in order to see the blog model, we need to register that into admin.py file. So what I can do is admin.site.register blog model. For that I need to import from blocks.models, import blog model. Now I have to migrate that. Python 3 manage make migrations and make migrations and migrate. Cool. So once we have that, we should be able to see the blocks. Yes, cool. Let's create some dummy entry. Blog post 1, content 1. Okay, so right now, as you can see, it doesn't display the title of the blog. So in order to do that, we have to modify blog model and define a function called string self return self dot title. Now we should be able to do that. So the server is restarted automatically whenever we are changing our Python files. So this is the first step. Now let's get back to creating an API view. So inside blogs, let me create a folder called views, because I will be creating lots of different types of view inside this folder. So first of all, it's function based views.py. I don't need the default views.py, so I will delete that. So inside views, I have to create init.py, and from blocks.views.function based view, I will import everything from there. So now I will create blog view request and okay, first of all, I need response. Actually, I need to import REST framework. I have installed REST framework actually, so I don't need to install it again. You can see the documentation on how to install REST framework. Yeah, it's not that hard. We just have to go through few steps. Where is that? Yeah, you can just type in the install Django REST framework. They have pretty good documentation. We just need to install REST framework and some other dependencies, which is not that complicated. So once you have installed that, you have to include that in your application REST framework, and then comma REST framework. Yep, that's true. Blocks function based API. So inside function based view, let me import APIView from REST framework dot response import response. Okay, I think let me open a window. Yeah, just to be a bit faster. Because I have some reference to the code snippets. Open. Okay, so I need to import Django REST framework response and APIView. APIView belongs to decorators. REST frameworks decorator. REST import import view APIView, and now what I can do is APIView, and I can pass in the HTTP words like get post log view, and let me copy paste the structure of the response. So we have success true, get request verified. Right now we don't have any serializer, so let's see if we can call this function or not. Oh no, actually for now we can say if request dot method is equal to get serve this one, and if it's a post method we can actually return post method. If it's a post or if a post request fulfilled, we don't need this for now. Yeah, and if something is not defined, then we can just return invalid request. Return success is false, message is invalid request, data nothing is there. So if it's a get method, return get response or respond to the get request. If it's post method, respond to the post request. Now we need to define the URL for this, URL endpoint for this. What we can do is I'll create a URLs inside blocks, urls.py, and copy paste this config, change it to, yeah, initially it's a class based view, so I will call it class based view, and block view dot I don't have to specify its file name. Import, now we can just say block.views and import block view. Now I need to include that in our root project, so just copy paste and let's call it blocks and include from blocks.urls and import include method. Yes, so let's check if the server is running. No, server is not running properly because it has some problem with this method. See, already include. Yeah, so it's a typo, so save it. So the server is running fine. Let's go to the postman and try to call that. So we have an API called blocks/class-based-view. This is not the good name to create API, but this is just an example. Success. So we can make a GET request, we can make a POST request. Similarly, we can repeat this methods to create put and delete request inside blocks and function based views. So let's write a code to return blog posts. So in order to, if it's a GET request, let's return the list of blog posts. Blog model.objects.all. And now in order to return the data, we need to serialize it. So we need to create serializer. Yes, serializers.py class. Let's call it block. Yes, block serializer, which will inherit from REST framework. Yes, serializers.model serializer, and I have to import that from REST framework import serializers. Yeah, and from that serializers, there are different types of serializers. In this case I will be using model serializer because I want to bind this serializer with a blog model. Model blog model, we don't need comma, fields. So basically the function of serializer is to convert Python object into JSON object and JSON into Python object. But that's not the only function of the serializers. It can be used to create and update models as well. In this case, this is simple serializer, which will also actually create and update blog model. So with field all, it will consider all the fields of blog model during serialization process. From blocks.models import blog model. So we have the serializers function based approach. Now what we can do is serializer is equal to block serializer. We can pass in blocks because we want to convert many list of block items, so we have to pass in many equal to true. From blocks.serializers import block serializer. So now we can say serializer.data, so it will return JSON data once if we have something in a database. Let's see if it works or not. So class-based view, this is post request, make a GET request, Block model is not defined because I have not imported that. From blocks.models import block model. Try to make a request. Cool. So it returns a blog list of blocks. Actually right now we only have one blog post, that's why it's returning one. Let me create one more. Blog post 2 content 2, and then so if we try to send the request, it will return the two items. So that's how we create a get request to return all the block list. Now let's create a post request. Actually we will be doing that in class-based view. This is just an example how can we use API view. So this is how a function based view can be created using Django REST framework. Let's move on to the next step, class-based view. So in Django, actually Django has generic.view base class to create APIs, but in REST framework the base class is APIView, and all these views, GenericAPIView, createAPIView, updateAPIView, these are derived classes which inherits from APIView. So first of all, let's try to create a simple class that does CRUD operation using APIView, and then later on we will see how can we use list create API and retrieve update destroy APIView to achieve the same functionality by writing few lines of the code. So let's start with APIView. Let me create a new class called new file called this is class-based view using APIViews.py. So in this case, let me import from REST framework. These are the things which will be required to create APIView. Let's call it blog API view, which will inherit from APIView. So the base class APIView, it provides different functions that we can override. So this is similar to the Django view class, which means we can write get function, get, post, put, all these functions. Let me copy paste some of the things. Actually we already have we have already created a get function, so probably we can reuse that. So it's a get function that accepts self and request and blog, which will return list of blog items. So in this case I will have to import some of the things like blog model, blog serializer. Let me import those things here. Rather than typing everything one by one, I think it's easier to import the required things. Similarly, we can actually define a post method, self request args keyword args. So if we make a post request, probably we want to create an entry in blog model. For that, let me check request data if title is present or not. Request data dot get, because data is in dictionary. Yeah, it's a dictionary, so we can get the value from the dictionary using the dictionary.get title. So if this is not equal to empty, then we want to save the content. So for that we can use actually serializer to save the content. blog serializer, and data should be whatever is passed from the front end. Request data. Yeah, and serializer actually has a function called is valid, which should be called, and if it's a valid, we can use serializer, that save function, to create an entry on a blog model, and at the end we can actually return the response. Okay, return the response maybe this way. Yeah, I haven't included the else case because yeah, I want to be a bit quicker rather than spending a lot of time in this explaining only the API view. So we have created get and post request. Now let's try to see if it works or not. So blog API view, we need to bind this with the URL. So path, let's call it API views slash. So our API will be blogs slash API views. So if this is the URL, we can say blog API view dot as view, and we need to import that blog. We can directly import from blog dot views. For that we need to include inside init.py from blogs dot views dot class based views import asterisk. Yeah, I think it should be fine. Okay, let's check if this is working or not. So if we have an API called blogs slash API views, let me see if it returns everything. Cool. So it returns everything which is in the database list of blogs. And if we make a post request with title blog post created using API view and make a request, it should create a blog post with a new ID 3, and we can verify that from the Django admin. Cool. So we are able to create and get the blog items. Like post request, actually we can create put and delete as well. Let me copy paste put and delete functions. So in put, the idea is same. If we have passed in the ID, so it will accept request args and keyword arguments. If ID is present, it will create an item in the blog model, and it uses blog serializer to actually update the blog item. Let's see if it works. And for delete, so delete will accept the same ID, and then if the object exists, it will delete the blog. That's simple. Let's see if it works or not. Post put, so we have created blog with ID 3. If we make a request with ID 3, and let's call it updated, so it is working. So if we check the blog model, it has been updated. Similarly, if we want to delete blog item, let's say first one, we don't need these things. Let's say number 1, API put request fulfilled. Something is wrong. No, that's right. Now actually we need to use delete request, make a request, APIView deleted blog post. So we should not see blog post 1. Yeah, cool. So this is how we can use API, the base API view class of REST framework, and we need to write the body of each functions get, post, put, patch, delete ourselves. But if we use, okay, now let's move to the next step. So there are API views called create, update, list API views, which has been derived from the base class APIView. So these are like generic view classes that can actually achieve the same feature without writing all these codes. So with few lines of code you can achieve the same functionality. So actually let's try to create 2 different APIs. First of all, using list create, so that we have one endpoint to get the blog post and create a blog post, and next to get and to update, get and destroy a single item of a blog post. So let's do that. Let me create a new file called generic API views.py. Yeah, generic API views.py, and let's import the required dependencies, REST framework generics, and create a class name called blog list. So I want to create an API endpoint that will list the blog items and create an item. Sorry guys. Blog, let's call it blog list create API view, and generics dot list create API view. Yeah, it's called list create API view, and you can check what different things has been inherited from different classes. So for list create API view, so list create API view inherits from create ModelMixins, and then generic API view, which inherits from APIView. Let's go back to our code. Sorry once again. Yeah, now we just need to provide query set, query query set, and blog model dot objects dot all, and serializer class, serializer underscore class equal to blog serializer. That's all. We just have 3 lines of code which will list blog items as well as create the blog item. Let's test it. So import this from the blog view. For that, again we have to import that blog dot views dot generic views import asterisk. let's copy paste this line of the code. This is generic view approach, so I will use GenericAPIView generics. Don't know what's happening to my throat. Generics. Let's make a get request to blog/generics, so you can see just with a 3-line of code with this. So in the URLs we have generics goes to blog list create API view, which means it points to this class which only has 2 lines of code, and it returns blog items as well as it will create blog item. Let me do a check. We don't need ID to create blog post created using generic API view. Let's see if it works. See, it's working. Cool. Yeah, it's working using generic API view. Similarly, we can use same thing to update and delete blog item. So I will call it retrieve, update and destroy API view, which means retrieve, update and destroy API view. This one we just need to provide what's wrong. Okay, some special characters probably. We just need to provide query set and serializer. So right now without this, if I try to, let's say, update, make a put request to the generic with ID 2, let's call it updated. Method put is not allowed. Of course it is not allowed. Now let's create endpoint API for that. Destroy API view, and I will copy the same line of code, change this, and blog post view. Now generics, and then we have to specify the primary key and slash. Let's see, let's say if I type in 2, actually we don't need this ID for put request. Okay, let's try to make a get request first. We don't need anything. Get request is working too, so it returns blog item with ID 2. Let's make a put request with ID 2 updated generic API view updated ... Cool. So this is updating whatever we are trying to update. Updated, so it is updating the blog post with ID 2. Similarly, we can delete this blog post as well. Delete. Send the request should not be visible here anymore. Yeah, so it is not visible. Cool. So this is how we can use generic API view to create API endpoints with few lines of code. Now the last part is ViewSets. So there is also a feature in Django REST framework called ViewSets. Let's go back to the documentation of the ViewSet. You can see ViewSet is also a class-based view that actually exposes list and create actions. And view sets actually, first of all, let me try to use view sets, and then I will explain why is it useful or not that useful. It depends on what kind of application do you have. So in order to use view set, let me create a file called not folder but viewsets APIViews.py. Yeah, so basically, as defined in the documentation, we can create block view set and view sets REST framework that we can import view sets from REST framework and use the base class view set. So in this case, this view set is like a base class for the view set. There are different types of view set: model view set, generic view set, and also read only view set. You can find all this information in the documentation. Where is that documentation? Views, generic view set, model view set, read only view set, which exposes different kinds of methods like list, retrieve, as defined in the documentation. Where is that? So yeah, so the view set, the base class view set, defines or expose, we can override list, create, retrieve, update, partial update, and destroy functions, and we can write the body of that function ourselves, so passing in the queries. So this list will actually return list of blog posts. Retrieve will actually return a single item. We need to pass the primary key, and based on that primary key it will return a single item. Now so why is it called view set? Because it consists of multiple views. We can actually form different types of views from one view set. What does that mean? So let me create a new URL for view sets. Let's call it oh no, sorry, view set. Yeah, actually I'm trying to copy paste some piece of code so that we can finish it a bit quickly. So let's call an API which is called blocks/model view sets, and then these are model views, two different endpoints with a primary key and without a primary key. Okay, please don't worry about this, I will explain these things. So we need to import that block view sets and import that inside init from blocks dot views dot ViewSets API import asterisk, and in the URL, yeah, actually we can make it like we can include everything in a tuple. Enter blog post. And block view sets. So what I am trying to do is I'm trying to create use a view set, block view set as view, and then we can define if there is a get request, bind this with a list action and block detail. For block detail, if there is get request, bind this with the retrieve function so that it can return one block item. So here you can see one view set can create multiple views. So if we have different endpoints like view sets, we can use block list. If we have multiple endpoints, we can create multiple views from these view sets and then include that in each endpoint. Let's see if it works or not. So right now I will be using Postman, and I will say view sets. So method, okay, it's a get request. Now it should actually send list of blog posts, which is correct as expected. If I want to retrieve one blog post, let's say number 3, I am able to get that, which is as expected, which means we can the blog view set is working as expected. Now we don't need to actually create the body of each functions like list, create, retrieve ourselves. We can use ViewSets.ModelViewSet and write few lines of code to achieve the same functionality, which means let me create a new blog model. Let's call it blog model view set, which inherits from model views, and we just need to specify query set and the serializer class. And let's define new endpoint for this. URLs, go back to our urls.py, and let's create new endpoints called model view set. Model view set, and then we have different variables which will create different variables, which is actually abstracted from the model block view set. So this is model view set, this is also model view set. We have created multiple views, one to get the list of blog posts, one is to get the detail of the blog post, which is bind to model view sets endpoints. So if we try to, let's say, use model view sets, it returns the right item. Let's try to return number 2 because we have deleted number 2. Maybe it's 4, I don't know. Yeah, 4 item exists. Item with ID 4 exists. If we try to call model.viewSets, it returns the list of blog posts, which means this is working. So with just few lines of code, we can replace all these things. We don't have to use ViewSet in all the cases. But if you have some custom logic before returning the data or list of the blog, if you want to filter something, probably in that case it makes sense to use ViewSet so that you can filter, apply custom logic, and return the data to the client. If not, blog model ViewSet or model ViewSet should be fine. So what's next? Yeah, so when do we use this blog ViewSet? So we can go to the documentation. Let's go back to the documentation, and in this documentation you can see we can actually create multiple URL endpoints using ViewSets. And as you can see, we can create snippet list. Yeah, we can create APIs to get list of snippets, and then we can have nested URLs which will actually point. See, you can see this highlight function which do exist in a view set, a snippet view set, a highlight. So the main point is you can create completely new type of URL and bind to one of the function of the view set. So here highlight is a function and it provides a decorator called action. And then detail true. Detail true means does this view belongs to a detail view or a list view. If it's true, it means it will expect detail. Generally it expects a primary key so that it can act on the data. In this case it didn't expect primary key because self.get object will get the current required object. So we actually don't have to define all this URL config ourselves if we are going to use the routers provided by REST framework. So we can import default router and register that, and we just need to include that in the path, and all these URLs are created automatically on the fly. And this using router method is useful. Let's say if you have huge list of APIs and you want to be consistent with the API creation process all along your application, in that case router method is quite useful. And it actually has lots of abstraction, so in future maybe it might be difficult to understand what's going on under the hood, so it's like a trade-off. So ViewSets actually creates useful abstractions, and if you want to be consistent with the URL convention, this ViewSet method along with router is quite useful. Generally, or frankly, I don't prefer using ViewSet method. For me, for a small or medium sized application, I think if we know how to use generic API views, it should be enough to create a fully fledged good Django application. So my personal preference is to use generic API view, but it depends on the type of project you are working on. Yes, I guess that's all, guys. I hope it was useful, and if you have some questions, please let me know through the comment section below. Thank you.